Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sherlockian interview. A really special one today with Bill Barnes. The subject is Sherlock Holmes in Australia. Hi, Bill.
Hello there, Steve. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And you know, we literally are on different sides of the world. So tell everybody where you're dialing in from.
I'm in Sydney, Australia right now. A local member of the Sydney Passengers, the Sherlockian Society based in Sydney. We're one of four societies in Australia. There's a group in Melbourne, a group in Adelaide, and a group in Perth. So right around the bottom part of the country.
Fantastic. And the Passengers, remind everybody where the name comes from.
Certainly, yes. In the Holmes adventure, the adventure of the Glorious Scott, you recall there's a mutiny on board a ship on its way to Australia full of convicts and prisoners. And the mutineers blew up the ship and escaped in a small boat, and they were picked up by a passenger ship called the Hotspur, which is bound for Sydney. So the passengers on that ship, it was a passenger ship, the Hotspur, picked up the survivors from the convict ship, and they all arrived in Sydney and went their various ways from then on. So we are the Sydney Passengers from that story.
Fantastic. And you have some global passengers as well. So one of the things I love about the society, I'm a member myself, is the fact that you literally have members all over the world. And here's just a little selection of writers. And, you know, I would encourage all Sherlockian writers around the world to join the Passengers, because it's a fantastic society. So Roger Johnson, obviously from the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. Alan is from Australia, Brian and Alastair from the UK, and Yuichi from Japan. But you have some other countries as well.
Yes, we're very proud of our overseas members. We have about 25 overseas members from the UK, the USA, Canada, Sweden, Japan, Italy and the Czech Republic. Yeah, and we're always happy to have more.
And the cornerstone to that, I guess, is that you produce a lovely journal that comes out 3 times a year, and I must admit, every time it arrives, it's wonderfully packaged, and it puts a big grin on my face every time I see that in my mailbox.
That's great to hear, Steve. We try and keep that journal balanced between serious Sherlockian scholarship and a bit of humour, a bit of light-hearted stuff. We try and get a proper balance here, so it's an entertaining read as well as an informative read. We're actually very proud of that journal as well. People around the world, knowledgeable people like yourselves and Roger Johnson, have classed it as one of the top four Sherlockian journals in the world, which gave us a real buzz when we heard that.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned that there are some local societies as well. Having lived in Australia briefly for a year, I have got a concept of the sheer distances. I mean, you could pretty much fit the whole of Europe in Australia. So, you know, the idea of trying to have, you know, national events is rather challenging, but as I understand it, these guys get together quite often.
Yeah, we do a bit of travelling ourselves in Australia, of course. People travel between countries and between states and cities, and whenever we call into a city where a local group is, we always get in touch with them and try and get together for a drink or a meal. I was in Western Australia at the end of last year and caught up with the local group there and met them in a pub for a lunch, and it was a very pleasant day. The group in Melbourne has been going for quite a while. They're quite a small group, but they're pretty active. They have a great function every year called Mrs. Hudson's Cooking Competition. Everybody has to bring in a dish based on some canonical link, and they all vote who gets the best, who's the smartest one, and who's got the cleverest idea.
That's fantastic. The Mrs. Hudson cooking thing is definitely, I think cooking shows as well have become very popular on TV, and one of our most popular books of the last couple of years is Mrs. Hudson's Kitchen. By a lady called Wendy, and she's from Canada, and member of the Canadian Society there with Mark Alberstadt, and you know, Memoirs from Mrs. Hudson's Kitchen, I think it's called, and it's hugely popular. I think it's got 40 or 50 recipes in it from Mrs. Hudson's time, so that, you know, that they did the same sort of thing. You had to cook something that Holmes and Watson would have eaten.
Yeah, it's a clever idea, I think, and the people in Melbourne do a great job every year with their particular event. And then, of course, there's a group in South Australia who've got the great name of the Unscrupulous Rascals, which people who know their stories may recall comes from the adventure of Lady Frances Carfax, where the con man, Schlesinger, was actually an Australian fellow called Holy Peters. And Holmes described him as one of the most unscrupulous rascals that Australia ever evolved. So that's where they take their name from. And they're an interesting group as well. They get together quite regularly. So all the groups in themselves are quite active. But as you say, the tyranny of distance from Australia makes it very hard to get together nationally or get the different groups together in each other's town. So we do keep close contact with them they're all members of each other's societies, so we all know what's going on with each other. So we keep in touch that way. Plus, as I mentioned, whenever we travel interstate, we always catch up with the groups there and at least meet one or two of them for a coffee or a drink. So it's
yeah, and I would encourage anybody watching that's going to be visiting Australia to reach out to the societies, because I found that wherever you go to a major city, there's always Sherlockians there, and they're always up for a pint or a meal, as you say. Just a quick shout out for a couple of your members. So Chris has put together a fantastic anthology, which was launched in August, I think, in Sydney.
That's correct.
And Phil Cornell, one of the other passengers, is also in the book, forward by Leslie Klinger there. So this looks like a fantastic collection.
Yeah, Chris is a prolific idea man, and this is one of his fabulous ideas to put out an anthology of Sherlock Holmes stories with alternate Dr. Watsons. So he's got 12 writers, I think, who each come up with an idea for a different Dr. Watson and written a story about that. Chris comes up with some great ideas, and he's had this one going in his mind for quite a little while now. So he finally put it together and got the ideas and got the authors involved. So it's very well received as well. It got some good reviews.
Yeah, we do like anthologies. It brings us neatly on to the largest Sherlockian anthology in the world, which is the MX Book of New Sherlock Holmes stories. We're just launching in October volumes 16, 17 and 18, which is quite incredible. So we now have over 380 new stories. They're all new in the volumes. And we actually have a couple of Australian contributors. So Stephen and Narelle have contributed between them, I think, to 6 of the different volumes as well. So literally a global collection that keeps going. David Markham, who's the editor, is compiling the May edition already. So there's already stories flowing in for that one as well. So what's interesting for me is I noticed that Amazon have recently launched in Australia, which brings, I guess, a bigger opportunity around accessibility around books. Have you seen that making any kind of impact, Bill?
Not so much yet. Everyone knows it's here, of course, but it's a bit of a cutthroat book market in Australia between the online and the normal booksellers. But I'm sure Amazon will do pretty well as long as they keep the prices good for shipping and whatever. I'm not too sure they're going to print locally or they're going to do it ship from the US or UK.
Yeah. So talking about local authors and printing locally, we have a book coming out in October from Margaret Walsh. She's from Melbourne, and we have a print facility in I think it's in Melbourne actually. So all our local ordered books from our website get printed in Australia. So the shipping is kept low. But the Molly Boy Murders is an interesting new kind of take on serial killers, because as we were discussing before, lots of people put Sherlock Holmes up against Jack the Ripper. In fact, I think we have 4 books that do that. But Molly's decided to go with a new serial killer just after Jack. So it's going to be interesting to see the reaction to this one.
Sounds an intriguing idea for a book. Yeah, looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, fantastic. And then the other thing to mention is the next event that we've got coming up at Undershaw, broadcast from there, which is Sherlock and Shakespeare. So this is a Sherlock Shakespeare crossover. We've got a bunch of other things happening that evening, including a live performance from Ben Cardle, who's the deductionist, to suit the UK and US at the same time. Unfortunately, it's at 7:30 in the evening for the UK, which means 5:30 a.m. on a Sunday for the Australian viewers. So only the real true hardcore Australian Sherlockians will be dialing in at 5:30 in the morning. But as we were discussing a bit before, I think we would love to organise some events online to suit the Australian market and the Australian societies, and that could be something that we can work on going forward.
Yeah, they've got some good ideas there we talked about earlier on, so looking forward to advancing those and see how we can do. Yeah.
Fantastic. And just to finish up, this is the online website for the Sydney Passengers, and as I mentioned, fantastic society to be a member of. Really easy to join. Just click on there and you can sign up. And it's a really fantastic journal. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you, Bill. And I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, Steve. Good to talk to you too. All the best.